Welcome to session 5 of level 3. It's been a busy program so far. We're halfway through level 3. People have been learning about what a trigger is, what a reaction is, and a response. They've been learning how to shift over from a reaction into a response. They're learning awareness is the key, is the portal to making that choice. They're also learning about forgiveness, how to see somebody as more than their behavior. And to help them understand that even more, we have used the model of an iceberg, where when we draw out an iceberg, what we see on the surface is the behavior, the things that are verifiable that we can all see. But then using our understanding of humanity and our own experience as human beings, we begin to develop hypotheses about what might be happening beneath the iceberg. When we do that, we begin to take things less personally. We begin to understand the big picture. And we begin to learn that at the base of most icebergs is a woundedness that develops through life, through childhood, and in fact is a big part of allostatic load. Being human means we all have it. And so when we end up in a difficult situation, or we're having a lot of thoughts and feelings about another person's behavior, we can look down into an iceberg, we can draw it out, and we begin to work to understand what's really happening for them. And so we have used several icebergs. The first story was one missing in action, about a friend who doesn't turn up and support the patient or the family. And we looked at what the behavior was on the surface and what might be driving that behavior. And as we looked at it, it tended to be anxiety and fear of mortality. Second iceberg was one about bullying. Bullying is an important one. Most of us have either been bully-ish or we have been bullied. Understand that what drives that obnoxious, antagonistic behavior is a sense of fear, inadequacy, and not being good enough. In this session, we want to spend some time looking at double icebergs, because in any given story, it's not just one iceberg, it's two icebergs. And so let's have a look at our plans for today. So here we are for today. Today, we want to go deeper into understanding the defense mechanisms that we use to protect those places of inadequacy and shame that we have at the bottom of the iceberg. We want to discuss the defense mechanisms that we use, such as projection, repression, defensiveness, and continue to work with the iceberg model. But as I said, today we're going to introduce double icebergs, and that is how our iceberg interacts with other people's icebergs. Sometimes we think we're communicating tip to tip, when actually, when things get difficult, we're connecting primal wound to primal wound. We're also going to begin to introduce two communication skills, the use of I messages and reflective listening. All along, as group leaders, you would have been using good communication skills such as reframing, giving feedback, paraphrasing, asking questions. You've been using those good skills all along, but here we're going to open up the door to allow other people to see what's happening and to help them use those same skills in their lives. And we also want to look at some of the effects of projection, which is the most powerful form of defense that we tend to use. Projection meaning that what I don't like in myself, I project onto other people and say it's them, not me. We'll have opportunities to look at that so we can come to understand it better. The challenges are going to become more evident as we go along. The mood of the group may be dropping. They've just had some difficult homework in which they've been asked to explore those wounded places. So as a leader, it's going to be important for looking for signs of depression or discouragement. It's possible to refer people for individual support within Wellspring. It's also good to encourage people to receive support through psychotherapy, having a discussion with them about the value of that. I always recommend that people who do want psychotherapy Work with somebody who has experience with cancer. Cancer brings with it its own issues, including the effects on the mind due to the stress of cancer, the medications and the treatments of cancer, as well as the existential issues that arise when coping with a life-threatening illness. So we want to come down into using spiritual coping strategies when we see people are struggling. Remind them of the things that can be helpful to them. Meditation, the divine light invocation, journaling, art therapy, the forgiveness exercise that we talked about last week, the inner healer, the inner mentor, yoga, tai chi, qigong, to look at the resources that Wellspring has to offer that can support people as they do this work. People who are quieter in the session, we may want to check in with them individually. We want to encourage people to share their work, even the things that are uncomfortable, and model positive regard from the group and for the group, so that people begin to feel that it's comfortable and normal to understand that they do have wounded places inside of them. It's not an issue of condemnation. It's an issue of understanding and healing. So this is just a quick recap. Here we are with the difference between reaction and response, condemnation and discernment. Looking into the behaviors of others, seeing what drives the behavior of others, usually that deep wounded place. And accepting these wounds as part of the human condition, part of the allostatic load that we all carry. Feelings of guilt, shame, and unworthiness that are instilled at a very early age. Sometimes I say to the group, it's remarkable to me that most of us get up in the morning, put our shoes and socks on, and face the world. It's because we're resilient. Now we want to see how our icebergs interact with other people's icebergs. We'll be using this diagram on the flip chart. Iceberg A, iceberg B. The top of the iceberg will be their interaction that's obvious, the things that they say and do. And then all the way down through the bottom are the thoughts and the feelings, some of which they are aware of. And as we go more deeply, things that we're not aware of. Here's another story. Yes, another story from my own experience. I do encourage you to collect stories that will cast onto these icebergs well, and simple ones that aren't complicated or that reveal too much about yourself, ones that are very human. And so here's my story about living with very fashionable centipedes. I have a home with 2 daughters, not very fashionable teenage daughters. And we live in a rather small house. We don't have much space at the front door. We come in and it's a cupboard and boom, we're in the living room. It gets pretty disorganized and messy at the front door, particularly with shoes. So guess what? It's Friday again. It's after another long week. Isn't it interesting that for some of us, our trigger points are kind of predictable depending on where we are during the week. We just don't sort of have as much resource after a long week, perhaps. I've learned my lesson. I'm not dropping in for barbecue chicken anymore, but I have run out of food, so we are picking something up. I've picked up my food at the grocery store. I have been careful about my time. I did not get triggered at the grocery store. Ah, but the evening is young. I open up the front door and I trip. What do I trip on? Well, all the very fashionable shoes that are at the front door. The very shoes that I have been pleading with people to put into the cupboard. Just put them away, or someone's going to break their neck. And here I am, I'm the one. So I know one of my daughters is upstairs. She's studying for her exams. It's exam time. And this is her last year of high school. She's gearing up for university. I know she's stressed out. And I'm really stressed out too. I have a really big project that I've been working on, and I feel like I'm not getting very far, that the team is having difficulty working together, and that people aren't listening to me. And so my concerns have been kind of dismissed, and I'm worried about the impact this is going to have on the outcome of the project. So I'm pretty tired of navigating politics. So this is the last straw, as it always is, isn't it? I fumble for my keys at the front door. I've got my groceries, I've got my keys, and I kind of fall in through the front door, and I can't see my feet. I'm holding bags. And of course, there are all these pairs of boots and shoes. all extremely fashionable. And I think to myself, yep, a couple of well-heeled centipedes. I stumble and I trip. I almost fall over. I kind of land in the kitchen. I am fuming mad. So at this point, I would have the flip chart right here, and I would begin to fill it out. And I'd ask the group, what do we see on my surface? I'm yelling. I'm loud. I'm swearing. I'm saying things like, I nearly broke my neck. Are you trying to kill me so that the kid upstairs can hear me? You told me over and over again, you can't leave your shoes at the door. No one ever listens to me. This is the last straw. I've really lost my temper. Now, let's go to the other iceberg. There she is. She's sitting in her bedroom and her math text is out. And all kinds of paper in her calculator. And she looks really upset. She's studying math. She hates math. I storm into the room. She looks at me and she gives me the dreaded eye roll. A deadpan, unsympathetic expression. And she says, I know. What's the big deal? Oh, Mom, please, not right now. That's what we see on the surface of her iceberg is she's dismissive and she's not listening. And I can see the evidence of her being stressed because the books are out. And so we're off. There we go. The argument begins. So let's go deeper into my iceberg. This is mine. I'm saying to myself, everyone around here is so ungrateful. I work all week, I get a meal, and still no one cares. I could have broken my neck. No one ever listens to me. Can't you see how hard I'm working? I feel really, really angry and frustrated. I've had a really hard week at work. I was looking forward to coming home and having a nice meal. My family's ruined it. And I stubbed my shoe, my foot. My foot hurts. And she's not even listening to me now. Oh, my kids are spoiled and selfish. Let's go deeper into my iceberg. No one ever listens. I am ineffectual. I am powerless. No one is looking after me. I feel helpless. You hear the childlike quality to that. I'm all writing this on the board and I'm asking the group to elicit it. These are the things that come up. And I may have to probe for it because sometimes the group will stick with the lousy behavior of the kid and say, well, you're justified. But that's not the issue. It's not about justification. It's about understanding what's driving this reaction. Go a little deeper. I'm a lousy parent. I haven't raised my kids to care about others. I feel like I've always put my work first. And I'm a lousy psychotherapist because I know the difference between reaction and response. And here I am completely losing my cool. I always like to include something like that because just because we know it doesn't always mean we can do it. It's important to give people the message that this is a process. And even if we do know it, we can lose it. I want to cry because I'm really tired and I'm overwhelmed, but I'm just too mad to cry. Deeper, deeper, deeper. I'm helpless and no one cares about me. I'm a screw up as a parent, as a professional, as a person. I'm alone. No one cares about me or my needs. I don't even care about my needs. I'm useless. I'm unlovable. Now, that's not the material I carry on my shoulders every day. It's not something that's obvious. People would look at me and say, I'm a competent human being doing okay in the world, 2 kids. These are the feelings and the fears that we carry way down deep and are repressed in that unconscious zone of the iceberg. They're active, but I'm not cognitively or emotionally aware of it. Because they're stomped down, though, when they get triggered, they blow. So let's see where we're going. The other iceberg, a lot going on over there. Let's see how she's feeling. Oh, Mom, please, not now. I'm failing math. I'm never going to get it. I know, I did it again. I left my shoes out. It's not my fault. Everybody here does it. Always makes such a big Oh, here we go again. Blah, blah, blah. Can't you just chill out and get a grip? Can't you see how hard I'm working? Please, please leave me alone. Just go away. All right, so let's go deeper. What's really driving that? I'm going to fail this exam. I'm going to fail math. That's going to mess up my transcript and I won't get into university. I'm so stupid. I can't even get my shoes right. I feel like a failure and a loser. No one cares that I sit up here and I'm really struggling. Even deeper. I'm a lousy kid. I hurt my mom. I'm an ungrateful brat. Now I'm going to let everybody down and fail at life by not getting into university. I'm alone. I'm a screw up. I'm unlovable. Notice that it feels like an exaggeration, perhaps when we're up here at the top of the iceberg. But when we really begin to get into it, maybe we can appreciate that these are the feelings that are driving this behavior. Here it is. We think we're talking about shoes, but we're not. We're talking about feeling heard, feeling precious, feeling loved, and worrying about whether we're unlovable, feeling like we're failures. Suddenly, shoes seem pretty irrelevant. So I've drawn this because this is kind of what an iceberg would look like on a flip chart. I try to get in everyone's comments. I try to put the lines in where people have awareness, and then that pre-conscious level where, not so sure about this, but it's still happening. Like, I'm a lousy therapist. I want to cry. I'm overwhelmed. To the very bottom, I am useless. I'm a lousy parent and I'm unlovable. And when we begin to see that this is really wound to wound, it gives us a lot of information about how we want to proceed. So that's what an iceberg would look like. I like messy icebergs. This one's tidier than most of mine. Messy icebergs are, they capture the messiness of human emotion. Okay, push the reset button. We know about this. I'm coming home after a very hard week. I know that I am tired and overwhelmed. There's our awareness right there. I know already I'm triggerable. That's important. And I want a quiet evening with my family. I've picked out a few things for dinner. Maybe I should have just called in for takeout, but maybe I can manage to make it. I fumble for my keys. I step through the door and right into that pile of shoes that's usually there. Stumble, I hurt my toe, and I swear loudly, and I hear myself thinking, lousy, bloody kids always do this. They're such brats. And I can feel the heat in my face and the reaction that is erupting out of me. The kids heard me. She shouts, I'm up here. I know she has exams and she's been really stressed this week too, and so have I. I stumble into the kitchen, I sit on the chair and I rub my toe because that's what hurts, right? That's part of what hurts. I take some deep breaths and some more deep breath. And I reflect how I feel out of balance and overwhelmed. It's the shoes, but it's so much more. I'm exhausted. More deep breaths. What do I really need? Hot cup of tea. What we see in this scenario is different than the first one is I have opened up my awareness bubble. I'm listening to how my body feels. I'm listening to some of the thoughts that I'm having. I'm slowing it down. Because remember, the reaction line is a really fast one. And in order to, or the reaction line is the fast one, the response line is slower. When we slow things down, we're more likely to find that response. Okay, maybe I need 2 cups of tea. I need to talk to the kid about those shoes because someday someone's really going to get hurt. And it's going to be me at this rate. Let me calm down enough and make some tea. Maybe I can take a mug up to her too. I go upstairs with the tea and I knock on her door. And there she is. She's sitting in a pile of papers. She looks really upset. She also looks defensive. She heard me swearing downstairs. I bet she knows what's happened. So here what we're doing is we're taking in the information around us. We're opening up the picture. So it's not just about the shoes, it's about the context of the shoes. My hard week and her exam stress. Let's talk. Hey, thought you could use a mug of tea. I know I could. Thanks, Mom. You look pretty overwhelmed. I know, I feel pretty exhausted too. When you have the time though, we need to talk at that front doorway. We have to do some problem solving about that front doorway. It's pretty treacherous. I nearly broke my neck coming in. Oh, Mom, I know. I'm sorry about the shoes. I know I always forget. I'm preoccupied. I'm really scared about this math test. I just can't seem to get to do the equations right. I think I'm going to fail. Okay. So what we've done is we've stated what the issue is. We've got to talk about those shoes. We've got to do some problem solving. Problem solving is not blaming. Problem solving is looking for solutions. And we know we need to be calm to find solutions because we need to have our frontal lobes turned on. We can't be in the fight or flight part of the brain. Fight or flight part of the brain doesn't do good thinking. It just does good reacting. The response is going to come from the frontal lobe, so we need to calm everything down. What we see here is I am acknowledging what I see. I see when I look at her bedroom with all the papers, I know she's stressed, but I'm also seeing quite clearly, I'm exhausted, just like you are, and I nearly broke my neck coming in. It's a different timbre. It's a different conversation. It is a conversation. Okay, so iMessages. What does an iMessage look like? Here we go with some examples. The kid says, well, it's math's not my strength. I just don't get my teacher. My notes don't make any sense to me. I have to get my marks up as high as I can. I'm worried about getting into university. So this is reflective listening. Oh, wow, that sounds like a lot. And it sounds like it's snowballing. Is there anything I can do to help? Thanks, Mom. The tea helps. And just you knowing how hard I'm trying. iMessages. I get it. I feel overwhelmed too. Work has been a real bear this week. Let's see what we can do about that math. But I feel pretty upset when I stumble all over those shoes. I feel like no one cares about me. I'm scared I'm really going to hurt myself. What can we do about that? So that is all iMessage. Not at any point am I saying, you left your shoes, you lousy kid. I'm saying, hey, for me, this is what this is like. I'm pretty upset. I stumbled over the shoes. I feel like no one cares about me. I'm scared I'm going to hurt myself. What can we do about that? Mom, it's such a small space. I don't know. Can we talk about it later? Okay, we can have a family meeting and see what solutions we can come up with. The ultimate solution was a built-in shoe rack, but it was not going to be a solution that would emerge out of an argument. So those are iMessages. It slowed things down and it helped us communicate to each other in a meaningful way. So anger, this is not about swallowing the anger. This is not about sweeping the anger under the carpet. Everybody will be concerned about anger in the group, particularly women who've been raised not to be angry. Maybe they're learning that they can be angry, that they can have those feelings and it's okay. We just don't want to stay in an angry place. In this story, anger serves as a catalyst for change. However, anger doesn't do much more than alert us to a problem and to your state of mind. We want to become aware. I think that anger should really be an alarm that makes us curious. We don't want to stay in an anger for a long time. We want to explore that place inside of us. So taking time to become aware of what triggered the anger. Resisting the temptation to blame and shame. That means not just the kid, but yourself. Blaming isn't going to change it. In the short run, you may feel better because you released anger. But in the long run, it doesn't get you any closer to a solution. It's just going to build up resentment. So resisting that blame and shame process, we want to come back to ourselves and say, what do I need right now? What's going to help me hit that reset button? Generally speaking, for me, is a cup of tea. Not just the tea, the making of it, putting it in my favorite cup, sitting down and drinking it, gives me a time to slow things down so that I can hit the reset button and take another run at the problem through a response rather than a reaction. When we use iMessages like I was using in that scenario, we're being really, really honest. iMessages are a technique in which we take the responsibility to become aware of our own feelings and thoughts and to put them into words using the personal pronoun. The reason it's honest is because we're talking about ourselves, not about somebody else. And we're talking about the impact the situation is on us. We're not blaming, we're not shaming. So let's compare the difference between an iMessage and the blame and shame. I versus you. Okay. See if you know which one this is. You're such a slob. You can't, for the life of you, take care of your things. You are irresponsible, disrespectful. I've asked you a million times to take care of your shoes at the front door. Do I have to kill myself to get your attention? Do I have to break my neck? Okay, so that's anger, right? And the receiver at the other end of that is probably going to go into a fight or flight. And if they go into a fight, they're going to argue. It's not that way. You make such a big deal out of it. That's not going to be productive. Or they go, yeah. And they shut off. The eye roll. They dismiss. Neither are going to be satisfactory in the long run. None of these are going to lead to a reaction. So where's that reset button? We use the word I. Wow, I can still have feelings. Wow, I nearly tripped over all those shoes. I could have broken my neck. I know we've talked about this before, but I don't feel like we found a solution. I must say, I'm feeling pretty discouraged and unheard. What are we going to do about this? This conversation isn't about blame, but it's really an honest description of how I'm feeling. Now, no one can say to me, no, you don't really feel that way. Well, yeah, I do. It's my feeling. It's my feeling. I know how I feel. I'm thinking about this. I'm feeling it. I'm exploring it. This is how I feel. I feel let down and unheard and discouraged. No one can say, no, you don't. So there's not going to be an argument about how you feel. Now, it takes practice to learn to use I messages, especially when we're angry. But when we start taking responsibility for ourselves spiritually, we need to learn about this reset button. We need to learn how to pull back. We need to become aware of our feelings and identify what's happening. And when we do that, it's much easier to use I messages. I would encourage people to practice with journaling. Write a journal entry that's all about me. I feel, I, not a you. So here we go, pushing the reset button. Mom, I can't worry about the stupid shoes right now. I'm studying really hard and I don't think I'm going to pass this exam. Okay, I hear you. You are really working hard at this math and you're worried about the exam. Yes, and I haven't done well in this class all year and I hate the teacher. None of my notes make any sense. No one gets how strung out I'll feel. Oh, wow, I can see that. I can feel how distressed you are. Is there anything I can do to help? The tea helps, Mom. So part of what we're using here is feedback. We're letting the other person know that we hear what they say, and we're telling them that we know that we hear what they say because we're repeating it back to them. We're not parroting it like a parrot, but what we're doing is we're taking it in and making their reality for a moment, taking in their reality, feeling our way into it, and then saying, yeah, you are worried. I can see how worried you are. I can see how hard you're working. I can see how upset you are. Can I help you? So that was an example of active listening skills. What listening, active listening does is it slows us down. It helps us focus on what the other person is saying and really saying. If we're going to understand what's happening beneath the iceberg, we have to learn to listen beyond the surface and to go down more deeply to suss out what's really happening for this person. Too often when we hear someone speak, we don't take the time to let them know that we hear them. I hear you. So what you're saying to me is this. You're saying to me that this exam is really upsetting and you feel like you can't do it. And you're really worried about it. It sounds really tough. Or we think that we're getting what they're saying and we don't check it out to see whether we got it right. So I think I hear you saying that your teacher's lousy and that's why you're not getting it and that you're scared that this is going to affect your ability to go to university. No, Mom, it's not his fault. It's just our styles don't mesh. And I just have a hard time understanding the whole concept. It's not just the teacher, it's me too. Okay, so you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not feeling it's teacher's fault particularly. You're just feeling that you're not getting it. Yeah. Frankly, most of us don't listen well at all, and we're often formulating our responses before the other person has finished speaking. How many times have we done that? Formulating our answers before somebody's finished sharing what they're thinking. Interrupting others is a perfect example of poor listening skills. So Feeling heard and feeling acknowledged really helps. Notice that in this situation with the shoes, there's no immediate solution. Listening in and of itself helps us cope better. In time, a solution may arise. We may respond with, well, you should have gone to the teacher sooner if you don't understand. We'll get you a tutor. You're a smart kid, you'll get it. You don't have to be so bad-tempered about it. You always worry and you always do well. Those comments are all dismissive. Those comments aren't going beneath the iceberg. Those comments are all at the surface. We'll just fix it, right? We're not acknowledging what's happening under the iceberg. The kid isn't going to feel heard, understood, or supported. None of them help her acknowledge her feelings in order to accept that hard reality that for her, math is tough. Adaptations can come, such as the tutor or other support, but in the moment, acknowledging that you hear her is an important step in that process of acknowledgement. Do you hear it? It's the grief model. It's the grief model again. And sometimes we can throw this up on the board and say, look at the grief model. She's got a lot of hard realities to accept. Going to university is scary. Going to not being able to do well at math is upsetting. She's got a lot of thoughts and feelings, and some of them are going to be self-denigrating, like I'm stupid, I'm not good enough. So as she says that and gets acknowledged, and we can do the acknowledgement, you don't feel that you can do that. You feel like you're not smart enough. This is really hard. When we've gone around that loop, we can eventually come to the shift of, gee, I wonder what we can do about this. Don't want to go too quickly there. Otherwise, it looks like we're not listening. If I immediately say, well, what you need is a tutor, then I'm not acknowledging the thoughts and the feelings. Adaptations might come more gently if we say something like, gee, I'm wondering what might be helpful. What would help you now? Again, it's like the shoes. The solution's not going to come right away. The grief model is in action. These conversations can be quite interesting. And as a therapist, you're probably pretty skilled with active listening skills and helping people go beneath the surface of understanding what's happening for them. We know that when we acknowledge what we're hearing, not just what we're hearing, but the feelings beneath what they're saying, people really feel heard. And when they feel heard, they don't feel that they have to keep shoving you to tell you how they feel because they know you get it. And when everyone's getting it, we can then move into problem solving. Some people will say, yeah, but people don't do that for me in my family. Like the mom coming in and tripping. The kid isn't doing much reactive listening or reflective listening to her, but we can learn. We can learn by saying, doing the reflective listening, modeling it for other people, and then even saying, what I need to hear from you is that you hear how sad I am. You don't have to fix it. I just need you to hear and respond to how sad I am. We'll fix the shoes later. Slowing it down, helping people unpack it. It's really unpacking the iceberg. We don't have to go down to the deep levels, but we want to talk about the thoughts and the feelings. So let's go back to those icebergs and look what happens deep in the wounded places that get triggered in moments of conflict and reaction. Go back to our friend Sigmund Freud. Let's take out your cigar here. Freud understood that these primal wounds exist in all of us, but on a day-to-day level, they're just too painful to face. Thus, he and his colleagues developed an understanding that we develop psychological defenses to protect ourselves from these deep, unconscious feelings of unworthiness. There are lots and lots of defense mechanisms, but here's some common ones that people may have heard of. Denial, more than a river in Egypt, someone said. This is the most common one, and we use it all the time. It requires us to ignore or deny a difficult reality. If I don't acknowledge it, then I don't have to deal with it. It's pretty primitive as a defense system works, and anybody with cancer will understand that. You can't ignore symptoms of cancer and expect them to go away. We have to deal with it. Denial doesn't work well. Most hard realities can't be denied for long. The reality will keep emerging where the consequences are so great that they will eventually be felt. It's really widely common known, this one. People say, oh, she's in denial. In fact, we've been hearing a lot about it in terms of climate change, that there is a being in denial facet to that. A lot of us have been in denial about about the effects of climate change. Repression. Well, I think we know what repression is. This is when we shove our feelings down deep. We stuff these feelings and thoughts deep beneath our awareness into the unconscious. It's that beneath the solid line of the iceberg. Material above that line, we can become aware of, but material below that line is not readily available to us unless it gets triggered. Experiences will trigger it. These thoughts and feelings can come up in dreams. They may influence some of the choices that we make in life. They may influence behaviors. They may influence our future relationships. You may not realize the impact that repression is having, but everybody has a little bit of it. We need it. That's the way we get up in the morning, put our shoes and socks on and face the day. But this material does get triggered. And when it does, we want to be aware of it. We want to have that gentle sense of curiosity. This is, gee, wonder what this reminds me. What's happening for me? Projection. I'm going to spend a little bit of time with projection. I'm going to do an iceberg of projection because projection is a big part of what makes our relationships complicated. The mind is really clever. The mind is clever at protecting us from thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that we find unacceptable. So rather than saying, yeah, I can be greedy, feel a little greedy place inside of me, we push them on to other people. Oh, she's the greedy one. I know. In the fashionable centipede story, the mom attributed her feelings that she was a lousy mother by projecting those feelings onto her daughter and saying she's a lousy kid. Projections can be a little tricky, but we keep coming back to it in levels 3, 4, and 5. Displacement. Some of these things come up in folk stories or in sayings. It's called kicking the dog. In the fashionable centipede story, part of the reaction the mother was feeling was the anger and frustration at work. And since she can't lose her temper at work, she comes home and she launches it at a safer target, her daughter, who can't fire her or make her life more miserable in that context. Road rage is a perfect form of displacement. Someone's had a hard day at work, holds it together until they go home. Someone triggers them by cutting them off. So all that pent-up suppressed anger comes pouring out and is displaced onto the other person. I love it when people say, nobody around here knows how to drive except me. That's displacement. Sublimation is a healthier form. Sublimation is when we take the psychological energy of an experience and we direct it towards a healthy activity. Physical exercise is a prime example. People who work out are sublimating all of the thoughts and the feelings, the energy they have from a difficult day, and they're expelling it, expressing it, or redirecting this energy towards creativity, such as music, art, or sports. So we all do these activities. We all have these defenses. They're not bad. We just want to know about them. So here's an example of an iceberg of projection. So when I was a little girl, I visit my grandma in England. So things were a little different than it was here in Canada. She'd use her pretty teacups and have a special cake. And I'd really look forward to them. I'd wear my best dress and I'd behave like a lady. And in fact, I was told to behave like a lady. So I knew the rules of how to behave like a good girl. I knew how to behave like a lady. So you have to say please and thank you. And you never take the last piece of cake. You never take the last thing on a plate. I never really understood why. I just knew that it was something that good girls and ladies don't do. So my cousin was 5 years older than me and a tall boy with a long reach and a voracious appetite. After we had our tea and cake, there was always one piece left. And my grandmother would ask, who would like the last piece of cake? And my cousin would always say yes and just wolf it down. I'd be furious and I'd call him all sorts of names in my head, particularly that he was a pig. So what's at the top of the iceberg? And I draw this one out here. Top of the iceberg, then, is a good girl doing everything she thought she was supposed to do. She's sitting politely, she's speaking when spoken to, and she's drinking her tea politely, and she's not grabbing the last piece of cake. Heavens, deep down though, in that iceberg was somebody who really wanted that piece of cake. She could imagine how good it was. One piece just didn't seem to be good enough. It didn't seem to be enough. But she was conflicted because good girls leave the last piece of cake. She didn't want to appear piggy. But on the other hand, she felt very greedy and picky, and she wanted that cake so badly. But good girls don't take the last piece. That's the setup. So it's not me, it's you. It's in the cousin's iceberg, who was invited to have the last piece of cake, and he took it. He downed it. He had no problem with it. There was nothing being evoked in his iceberg. He's a growing boy. He wanted a second piece. He was asked if he wanted it. He took it. His little cousin didn't seem to care. He had no problems. That's the good girl iceberg. She is calling her cousins all sorts of names in her head. He's greedy. He's a piggy. Yes, he's very bad. He took it. He broke the rules. He's a greedy pig. Perfect example of projection. The unacceptable feelings of wanting that cake, of being greedy, is projected onto the cousin. I can't be a good girl and have the last piece. So I remain the good girl and I project my piggy desires for that cake onto my cousin. Not to insult pigs. I'm actually very fond of pigs. So this is what that iceberg looks like. The good girl one on the left-hand side, and the cousin who doesn't really have an iceberg engaged in this, he just wants a piece of cake. And all the greediness, the pigginess gets projected. He's the pig, not me. Even though I'm the one who's obsessed about the cake, he's just eating it, enjoying it. My betting is, had I said to my cousin, gee, I'd love a piece of that cake, he probably would have cut it in half. He was a generous guy, just that he didn't think of it. So you may find other examples in the group. Can you think of any time when you dislike someone, that what you dislike in someone else is also in you, or perhaps only in you? That's what Eckhart Tolle would say. If someone grabs a parking spot that you were just about to nab, and somebody monopolizes the conversation and you feel shut down, maybe you want to monopolize it. Thinking someone doesn't like you when in fact it is that you don't like them. Thinking that someone is judging you when in fact you're judging yourself. Actually, that's a very common one. We're judging ourselves. We often feel like we're in a room full of judges, but actually we're just with ourselves. So the homework. We're wanting people to really explore icebergs. Icebergs that this is sort of the setup to look for a common example. Encourage people to do a double iceberg on something fairly simple, not too deep. You don't want to go down into the heavies yet. This is a skill that gets better with time. So we want people to practice. This is a little trick here. So think of some of the qualities or attitudes in one or more other people that you present, and you can have previous examples from your homework. Now try to find some evidence of these qualities in yourself. If you find yourself detesting or attacking some quality in another person, try to sense how you may be attacking it in yourself. It's a really intriguing idea, isn't it? If this is difficult, think rather of qualities or habits in others that irritate or frustrate you. Focus on the way that these things make your life more uncomfortable. Now note whether or not you are, to some extent, blaming your discomfort on them. This is a form of saying that you caused my discomfort and inconvenience. You see how you can take it back. Take back your own responsibility by owning your reaction and changing it. I think of this as back to the chicken example, the tale of two chickens. A lot of the anger that was felt by the person was because she was late. She was trying to do too much in too little time and blaming everybody else for it. Too many people in the lineup. Cash register's too slow. The cash girl isn't working hard enough. The driving is bad. When in fact, I'm the one who should have left earlier or made a plan B and C because it wasn't reasonable for me to think I could pick up a meal and pick up my children. Think of and write about examples of where you tell yourself, I'm not getting what I need from this person or situation. Is this a projection of your own frustration with yourself or with part of yourself? So projection is a little tricky, but we want to start opening up the door to look at it. Imagining yourself secure. After relaxing deeply, imagine that you are feeling totally secure and fulfilled, universally liked and respected by other people, and beloved by God. How does that feel inside? Now, when you experience the irritating behavior of others, does it bother you now? This can be a very powerful exercise and really can be explored deeply. The more at home and safe we feel, the less triggerable we are. Further, trying not to judge other people. Keep practicing with the love flow, the love channel. See if you can surround them with light. Keep practicing the work of not judging others and then noticing, how does that feel? And then also practicing communication skills such as iMessages and reflective listening.